in due course of time. Text 39. Shadhava labhate jnanam tatpara samyatindriya jnanam labdva param shantim achirin adhigachati. Translation. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Text 40. Agnascha radhadadhanscha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti naparo nasukham samshayatmanaha. Translation. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Text 41. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchina samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. Translation. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by works, O conqueror of riches. Text 42. Tasmad agnana sambhutam hrichtam jnana sinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishto tishta bharata. Translation. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. End of chapter, Transcendental Knowledge. Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text 1. Arjuna uvacha sanyasam karmanam Krishna punar yogam chasham sasi yachstreya etayor ekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. Translation. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Text 2. Shri Bhagavan uvacha sanyasa karma yogascha nishayasa karav ubau tayos tu karma sanyasat karma yoga vishishyate. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works. Text 3. Yenya sa nitya sanyasi yona dveshti nakangshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Translation. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Back to text 35, and I'll read the translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder, Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. Purport. The result of receiving knowledge from a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of a separated existence from Krishna is called Maya. Ma equals not. Ya equals this. So not this. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 + 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 - 1 is also equal to 1. This is the case in the absolute world. For want of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted towards this end, that a living being, as his eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose, since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities. And giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam, Muktir hitvanyata rupam svarupena vyavashtitahe. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. So we have to realize that we are not this body and that we are the eternal servitor of Krishna. And isn't it interesting that we find out that we're really only happy when we're serving? A lot of people in the material world are thinking that they want to be served, and they go to the restaurant, like Bhima said the other day, and he said, they don't have to do the dishes that way, and they don't have to cook, and they're just very happy to be served, and they have to work very hard to get that. But they're thinking they're only happy when they're served, but it's actually true that we're only happy when we're serving. Holding the door open for someone, there's a happiness, there's a nice exchange there. There's a nice loving exchange there. And these are the attitude in ourselves, and servant of the servant of the servant, dasanu dasanu das. And we we are trying to get ourselves fit to serve, and we're trying to purify our hearts. And Srila Prabhupada says the way to clean this material dirt from your heart is by chanting the Lord's names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the process to remove the dirt from our hearts, because we've accumulated a lot of dirt over many lifetimes of karma and taking births in different reincarnation, taking births in different bodies. But these bodies are just temporary, and so we shouldn't get really attached to them. It's like a shirt or something like that. It's not very important. Whether it's someone can get attached to a shirt, whether it's just a shirt they wear when they're in their room, or whether it's a very opulent shirt that they only wear when they go out for a nice gathering. But people can get attached a little bit to a shirt, but they shouldn't get attached to the shirt nor their body, because it's very temporary. And the Mayavadi philosophers are thinking they want to maybe merge into this Mayavadi philosophers is kind of like veiled Buddhism, and that was given for a reason to the people, to delude the masses, and because that's what was needed at that time. But now, thanks to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's given us the holy names, and this is the only way in this age, this degraded age of Kali, to make spiritual advancement, real spiritual advancement. And so he says, and when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. So there's nothing that is not Krishna. There's nothing, he is the supreme proprietor, he is the owner of everything. And so there's nothing that he does not own. So claiming ownership over things is one reason that people are getting attachment. They're thinking that they own things, and they're thinking that things are theirs, and so it becomes a source of frustration when this is not reciprocated. When someone becomes kind of obsessed with someone or something, and it's not Krishna, then they will be let down. And so that's kind of like a form of lust. Lust isn't always sexual. Lust is kind of like this, I want that for my own, and I want to possess that. And things are constantly changing. A baby is going to grow up to be a teenager probably, and then an adult. And so the parent can't get too attached to the baby, because it's just inevitably going to change. But the spirit soul inside the body is not going to change. The spirit soul is kind of watching all these changes go by. The spirit soul, that's why we may feel kind of youthful inside. We kind of feel the way we were sometimes when we were 15 or 20. We feel that we're that same person, but our body has changed so much. So what's the same? It's your soul is observing all of these changes and is seeing all these things as the soul takes birth and goes from boyhood to old age, and then later disease and death. But one should not lament, because at death one just takes a new body, and depending on your consciousness at the time of death, and depending on your activities, you can take hopefully a birth, a nicer birth, and maybe maybe get a spiritual body and go back to Goloka Vrindavan. That would be the best. Or maybe a human birth, or maybe some people are going down to a more degraded birth of a hog or a worm or something like that. But we've gone through all these stages. To get to this human birth, we've had so many births in the past, and luckily we don't remember them, because it would be too much for us to actually handle. So Krishna doesn't allow us to remember every single birth like that. Going on to text 36 here. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So Krishna is saying, even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, don't lose hope. It's when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So some people might think, oh, I'm the worst sinner, I'm the most degraded person, I should just give up. I shouldn't even try Krishna consciousness, because, gosh, I don't deserve it. And that would be kind of a defeatist attitude. And we can't have this defeatist attitude, because we take a verse like this and say, well, Krishna is saying, no matter how sinful I've been or how degraded I think I am, I'm eligible too. And I'm eligible to try to get someone else in the boat as well. So don't lose hope. And, you start from where you are today. And some people, for some people, a small setback can be, missing an RT. They may have a track record of they haven't missed an RT for 2 years, and then they miss an RT, and they think, oh gosh. And so that for them can be a small setback, and they're going to work to get back on track. But for another person, it could be something, worse, or something. Everyone's on a different level, in other words. And no matter where you're at, you just want to try to maintain and elevate. You just never want to slip back. You never want to slip down, and you want to get back on track. You want to get those muscles. Krishna has given you those muscles by chanting. He's given you those muscles of how to get back on track, and how to continue your service, and how to purify your heart. And Arjuna is kind of wondering, he's saying, is it work or renunciation? Which one is it? And like they're almost opposed to each other. And Krishna is saying, no, the work and renunciation can go together. It's not that you either work or you renounce work. He's saying, yes, work, but just do it in Krishna consciousness. That's the secret, is that you want to work in Krishna consciousness, and keep Krishna in mind at all times. And so you can work, like George Harrison, or for instance, his songs like Something by the Beatles, Something is about Krishna, actually. Even though it says something in the way she moves, he said that, well, I kind of had to veil that a little bit. I had to kind of obscure it just a little bit, but he made it clear to his confidant that Something by the Beatles is about Krishna. And also Here Comes the Sun is about Krishna. So George Harrison was writing songs for Krishna, and he was becoming Krishna consciousness. So he was taking his work and he was thinking about Krishna, and he was doing it for Krishna. And so when we sweep the floor, or when we do dishes, or whatever our work is, we're going to integrate Krishna into our thoughts, and we're going to do it for him. And because he's the supreme proprietor, and he's Adhokshaja. And so what is one's constitutional position? That's servant of Krishna. This is knowing that's Buddhi yoga, that's Nishkama Karma yoga, and that's Krishna consciousness. He talks about in the purport about the blazing forest. The material world is like a blazing forest. It's also like an ocean, and the ocean is very hard. If you're even an expert swimmer, may struggle in the middle of the ocean. And imagine in the forest fire, if the forest is all on fire all around you, it can be overwhelming, and you can think, I've got no hope here. But you can cross over into the spiritual world and get immediate relief. It's like one of those helicopters with the water bags, just gets dropped right around your area, just puts the whole fire out, and it can happen very quickly. Let's see here. You've got a priori knowledge and a posteriori knowledge. Text 38. In this world, there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due time. So he's saying in due time, in the due course of time. In other words, it takes time. Let's not demand it all at once. One time, I think John Lennon and Yoko had Prabhupada come over, and they said, can we meet with Prabhupada individually? And they said, well, usually he comes with a servant. But so they came over, and the takeaway was, I think they kind of asked for, they wanted just enlightenment, like with the snap of a finger, and these things take time. But transcendental knowledge transcending material knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And there's no peace. It's like knowledge and ignorance. We're trying to get transcendental knowledge. We're trying to get away from ignorance. This is really a battle between ignorance and knowledge. And so many people, that's the main battle people are fighting. It's one of the main battles people are fighting. They're in ignorance, but they need knowledge. They need transcendental knowledge. Sometimes we're in ignorance, but if we have the right knowledge, we cross over the ocean of material existence just with a little bit of knowledge from Guru. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te ganam pariprashnena sevaya. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Render service unto him, and this self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And this knowledge is the king of knowledge. Raja Vidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pariprashanena Sevaya. No. This knowledge is the king of knowledge, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives realization of the self, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. And another one, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yoveti Tatvataha Chakvadeham Pranarjan Mam Eti Mam Neti So Arjuna Neti Mam Eti So Arjuna. Just to remember my transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. And then one does not have to, upon leaving this body, take material birth again, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So there's no peace. There's no peace, as he says in the next purport. Or no, where is it? There's no peace without knowledge. I think is what it is. Text 39. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attaineth the supreme spiritual peace. So we're after this peace. We're after peace. Peace. There's not much peace in the material world. Every animal and every being is looking over their back to make sure they're not going to get eaten by a bigger bug or a bigger animal. And so there's not much peace in the material world. But for a faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and subdues his senses quickly, it doesn't just say subdues his senses, it says quickly. So the quicker we can snap our fingers and subdue those senses, that means our judgments and our hurt self, some people may have had some trauma when they were younger. We've all had trauma in different ways, or things that have kind of traumatized us or changed us, shaped our personality, things that left a bad taste in our mouth. But if we can subdue our senses quickly, sometimes they say to get a scar, sometimes we might get a scab, we might get a cut, and then we might get a little scab. But if you pick at a scab, that's how you get a scar. So you're supposed to let that scab kind of fall off on its own a little bit. So it's a little bit about patience, but it's also about subduing the senses quickly. But it's about letting yourself heal and not reopening those wounds. Once we go down, sometimes it's hard to stop. Once we start scratching the scab, it can be kind of hard, or scratching the mosquito bite. I'm just going to scratch it until it comes off, it's until it bleeds. It's not very good, And so once you start kind of scratching that itch, it's really hard to stop sometimes. So you have to subdue your senses like lightning quickly. So it's like, nope, I'm not going to get angry. I'm going to give it some time. Give it a day. Give it some distance, and realize that maybe the other person has had a whole different history than you have, which is true. They're coming from a completely different perspective, and we're all in different spots. And so we're trying to help each other, and we're trying to have that kind of positivity that we have with each other, that we have when we're on book distribution towards someone that we see that, hey, they might be able to take a little Krishna consciousness. It's like, hello, friend. Hello, spirit soul. And that's kind of, we want to have that kind of relationship with each other too. Simply by acting in Krishna consciousness, he can attain the highest perfection. Controlling the senses. Text 40. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. So doubt is, we have to have some faith. That's what it was. We have to have some faith. We have to have a little bit of faith to get happiness, to get knowledge. We have to have some faith. I've got it in my notes. I'll bring those out in a second. But there's ignorant and faithless persons, and then there's doubters. So these are kind of the three types of people that are not able to attain God consciousness. There's the ignorant, the faithless, and then the doubting soul, who might think, well, this is interesting, but I don't know if it works for me where I'm at in my life. And they have a little bit of doubt. And so we have to have a little bit of faith. Text 41. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by works, O conqueror of riches. So being not bound by works, no matter what you do, no matter what your work is, you're not going to be bound by it. You're going to do the work and you're going to kind of let it go. And it's up to Krishna at that point. Let Krishna do his part, his big part, which is he wants you to act, but then he wants you to kind of let it go and let things work out. And that's how he speaks to us, is different ways. He speaks to us in subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways. But we have to be able to kind of understand him on his terms and how he speaks. The fruits of his action. So the fruits can be good fruits or bad fruits or no fruits, but you're going to renounce them. Text 42. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. These powerful words from Krishna. He's imploring Arjuna to fight, and Arjuna is saying, "Well, isn't this a sin?" Or, I think this is sinful to kill, to fight these people, and but he wants to slash his ignorance with the weapon of knowledge. So knowledge is the weapon that will destroy ignorance. And this is a nice purport here that summarizes chapter 4 in different parts. Purport. The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of one's material possessions, and the other is called knowledge of self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. But one who performs such sacrifices with the spiritual objective or in devotional service makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that they are also divided into two, namely understanding of one's own self or one's constitutional position and the truth regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who follows the path of the Gita as it is can very easily understand these two important divisions of spiritual knowledge. For him, there is no difficulty in obtaining perfect knowledge of the self as part and parcel of the Lord. As such understanding is beneficial for such a person who easily understands the transcendental activities of the Lord. In the beginning of this chapter, the transcendental activities of the Lord were discussed by the Supreme Lord himself. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all-knowing personality of Godhead is certainly fool number one. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifices to the demigods, sacrifice to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy and household life, in controlling the senses, in practicing mystic yoga, in penance, and in foregoing material possessions, in studying the Vedas, and in partaking of the social institution called Varnashram Dharma. All of these are known as sacrifice, and all of them are based on regulated action. But within all these activities, the important factor is self-realization. One who seeks that objective is the real student of Bhagavad Gita, but one who doubts the authority of Krishna falls back. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in the disciplic succession from time eternal, and he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord as they were imparted millions of years ago to the sun god, from whom the instructions of Bhagavad Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is expressed in the Gita itself, and beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the supreme person, and his activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of the Gita. Chapter 5, text 1. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" Text 2. The Blessed Lord said, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works." It's a lot easier and more practical to work, to do work, to not to give up. The Mayavadi is either doing is either trying to stop work, or they're acting with non-spiritual senses. But instead, you just act with your spiritual, engage your senses in spiritual activities, engage your senses in seeing the Lord, chanting the Lord's glories, bowing down and engaging your senses like that. And he definitely says work in devotional service is better than renunciation of works. And then in the purport, Prabhupada says, seeking sense gratification is a cause for material bondage. And so getting past these dualities of heat, hot and cold, and yours and mine, and death and birth, and getting past these dualities and trying to have a long-term vision, not just today's vision, not just this week, this month, this year, not 50 years, but like 100-year vision, hundreds of years vision, timeless vision, a vision that's beyond time itself. There's no time in the spiritual world. There's no duality in the spiritual world like that. And text 3, one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Regarding text 37, as the blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. So Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur comments, Krishna says, for one whose heart has become purified, I destroy completely whatever karma has already been generated, with the exception of his Prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma. So transcendental knowledge thus destroys all reactions, both pious and sinful, all except Prarabdha karma, or matured reactions. In other words, such as one's present material body. So one's present material body is an example of Prarabdha karma, which is like a matured karmic reaction that he's not going to be destroying that reaction. But if your heart is purified, he's going to be destroying whatever karma has already been generated. And in text 38, in the purport, Prabhupada says, this knowledge is the mature fruit of devotional service. And when one is situated in transcendental knowledge, He need not search for peace elsewhere, for he enjoys peace within himself. In other words, this knowledge and peace are culminated in Krishna consciousness. That is the last word in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's a powerful thing to say, that this is the last word in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's one of the main teachings Prabhupada is saying, that knowledge and peace are culminated in Krishna consciousness. And then in 39, he says, without faith, peace is unobtainable. So to get towards peace, we have to have some faith. And then in text 40, he says, knowledge will remove your doubts. So knowledge is going to remove these little doubts that we have. And then in text 1, how Arjuna is thinking that work and renunciation are contradictory. And Lord Sri Krishna is, he's confusing Arjuna a little bit, but that's for our benefit. So things can be gone into on a deeper level. In 5.2, from the purport, work and devotional service is better than renunciation. Everything belongs to Lord Sri Krishna. Detached work is safer, easier, and more practical. It purifies the heart and solidifies realizations. So this detached work is also going to purify your heart, and it's going to solidify those realizations that you've already had. The karma sannyasi is one who renounces work. His choice for his senses is either mundane action or inaction, as his senses have no legitimate engagement. Detached work is a more practical path of renunciation, for as Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana comments, working in renunciation strengthens one's knowledge. So we're trying to get more knowledge, and we're trying to work in renunciation, and we're trying to have some faith. And then text 3, it says, feeling neither hatred nor desire for the fruits of work, of work there. And what does he say? Let's look at that. 5.3. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits, from the text, one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. So as long as we don't hate or desire the fruits, then we're being renounced. And so the fruits is like the results. So as long as we don't hate or desire it, desire more or hate it, or so it's about not having an opinion. And when we do something, we really have to give it up to Krishna. We really have to say, thank you for letting me be on this path, and thank you for showing me how to serve you. And no matter what happens, I'm not going to get attached to this service that I have, or this job that I have, or this position I have, or this or needing a pat on the back for, I swept the floor, but I don't need anyone to know that I did it. Not wanting any sort of credit. These are hard things sometimes. But just acting, and then just really letting it go. I love the fact that 1 + 1 = 1, and 1 - 1 = 1 as well. That's a powerful thing. And we're dealing with this material energy. The material energy is kind of like, we used to watch sometimes Saturday morning cartoons, and the advertisements would be so enticing, because it was a racetrack game or something, and it looks like so much fun the way they advertise it, with the music, and the friends are all there, and they shoot these commercials so beautifully, and they make it look so fun. But then you get it, and it's in a box, and you have to put like 1,000 pieces together, maybe, and then maybe no one's coming over to play, or maybe all these things, or maybe you lose a few pieces, or it just wasn't quite like it looked on the commercial. And that's the material energy. It's never quite as good as the fantasy. We like to get into our fantasies sometimes, and we can dwell in those, but the reality is those are just fantasies. Those are fleeting, dreamlike things. That's the material energy trying to kind of delude us and test us and see how strong is their resolve. Are they going to buy this thing they may not need, or are they going to obsess about a certain person or our celebrity? And that's the material energy, like trying to taste a mango in the mirror. And I've got some song lyrics here for you that it was from a pop song, but I think if you put Krishna, if you make it about Krishna, I think it's very nice. Here's the lyrics for a song, and the lyrics go like this: every time I look into your lovely eyes, I see a love that money just can't buy. One look from you, I drift away. I pray that you are here to stay. And then it says, anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it. And then he says, I live my life to be with you. No one can do the things you do. I'm glad to give my love to you. I know you feel the way I do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it. So that's the attitude I want to have for Krishna, is whatever you want, Krishna, you got it. That's what I want as well. And this is your land. So please just utilize me if you like in some form. And I thank you very much. So any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu? I could look it up. This particular song? Sublime. Okay. So the first thing was, what year was that song made? And then the second thing was the definition of sublime. And sublime is just completely wonderful. Sublime, in my best extent, is something is sublime that is completely wonderful, and without any tinge of negativity or anything like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Jagannath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So I like this point on acceptance. I was hearing His Holiness Romapad Swami, and he was giving different examples about how if we accept certain things that happen to us, it's that acceptance is the key to handling life well. So this is my question. What are some of the principles that we have to accept, that we need to accept in Krishna consciousness? Like, yeah. If you could, yeah, that's my question.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, of course, we accept that we are going to chant at least 16 rounds a day, and we're going to follow the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, intoxication, gambling, or illicit sex. And we're going to accept our current position. It may not last forever, but if we're being asked to do a certain service, we're going to, I guess, accept that, or we're going to talk to someone about maybe changing it, and accept, maybe for me sometimes it's maybe accepting that I can't do it all, or we kind of want to do it all sometimes. And there's so much engagement here at the RBC and other Krishna conscious centers around the world. There's so much engagement, and that's very nice. But, so we can't feel like we can do, maybe feel like we can't do it all, because we can't, because, sometimes we want to do all of the programs and we want to chant, and we also have Krishna conscious ideas of our own of how to propagate and further Krishna consciousness. And those are valid ideas. If you have ideas about how to propagate Krishna consciousness, like Bhima said the other day, I really liked what he said about, he said, don't wait to do those things. If you have some ideas, don't wait, because those things will just kind of get put off. And we try to do those things today, and so at least a little bit every day. We want to read so many books. We want to read all the books. There's so much transcendental literature out there. So I have to accept that I can't read it all. Sometimes we can get a little bit knocked down. We see so much that we might just throw our hands up and say, I just can't do anything. I'm overwhelmed. But Krishna is saying, just do a little bit, read every day, and just, yes, we all have a lot of books, but at least pick up one of those every day and read for a bit. Don't feel like you have to read all the books every day, because we can't. And we're never going to know it all. We're never going to have it all in our minds the way that we wish we could. But it's about just a little bit every day, structuring your day. Very nice. We have to accept that I shouldn't sleep more than the amount I should, maybe 6 hours. And we have to accept that, no matter what happens, I'm going to get back on the horse, and I'm going to get back on track. And we have to accept that things are going to change. Change is unavoidable, and time is destroying, just destructive force. So relationships will change. That's inevitable. So many things are going to change. And so just being open to that, and kind of being above all that, we want to kind of be above all that. If there's a storm down below, we kind of want to be up above the clouds where it's sunny. And so the things that we don't have to accept is someone blaspheming the Lord, or someone doing ill will to a Vaishnav, or we should never accept to degrade ourselves, or seeing other people degrade themselves. We shouldn't accept that. So there's just a few thoughts. So Hare Krishna. Yes. Well, this song, Anything You Want, You Got It. This is the Roy Orbison song. Yeah. Sure thing. Yeah. All right. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai.